Hello YouTube, welcome back to another in the series of video. Shaz plays the new Niji solos on every single account. Now we are moving on to Yada, Setsuna's solo. 8.671 million voltage to S rank on advanced, which is actually tempered down a bit because you get 2.6 million voltage if you pass all the ACs. Takes your raw voltage total that you need to S rank the song down to about 6 million, which is very, very manageable. Maybe not as it's not as low as Diabolic Mueller, but Moulier, but you know, this is still pretty low considering the AC reward voltage. Now, this is another song that only has a song gimmick and no note gimmicks. The song gimmick, non-second years, you lose 50% base crit chance, which doesn't seem too bad until you look over here and you see that you need to get 7 crits. Speaking of the appeal chances, we have 7 of them. First and fifth require 94k voltage from your SP gauge. Second AC requires 7 crits. Third AC requires 5 tap skill activations. Fourth AC requires 367k voltage. Sixth AC, since we already covered the fifth one, 6th AC also requires 5 tap skill activations. The last AC requires 329k voltage. And the appeal chance gimmicks are all over the place. The gauge ACs give you a 30% SP gauge gain rate up. This crit AC number 2 gives all second years a 50% base increase in their crit chance. So basically, it's a near guarantee that your second years are going to crit if you have a second year frontline. Your tap skill ACs second years gain a 30% base skill activation rate up. You only need 36% of these to proc, so you could actually probably, just by the numbers, get away with running 2 second years and whatever when it comes to making sure you get these tap skill ACs to clear. And then your voltage ACs in ACs 4 and 7, you get a 20% base crit power increase, which shouldn't be too bad, because if you imagine that you're going to be going into the gauge, going into the AC with a full gauge, you don't really need to tap for all that much. Now, this particular song, is it necessary to build an all first year frontline or all second year frontline? Not necessarily. Now the kind of you would basically, if you do have most of the cards, you would basically have a default team you could kind of go to. And it would be any combination of these 3 scores. First Fest Yo, First Fest Chica, or God, what event was that? The pure attribute Rico from the Kasumi event. You could basically use any combination, 2 of those 3 cards as your frontline scorers. And then basically, if you happen to have like an initial Yo, a First Fest Rico, Moon Rabbit Rico would actually work okay as well. You know, Mononoke Umi, Halloween Umi would work, right? Because you're at this point you're just looking for second years. You're not really worrying about the attribute too much. Night Sky Rico, thank you, chat. Now because I have enough scoring here from these two, what I'm going to do is I am just going to put in Party Honoka and call it a day. Right? I am running 3 second years with full appeal boosting backlines. Now, if you're not running, let's say, if you want to run on attribute, but you're not running on attribute second years, let's say you're running initial Ellie with, like a Detective Pana and a Checkmate Rena, right? So 2 first years and a third year. What you're going to have to do is probably get any and all second years that can score halfway decent and stick them into this side slot. You know, whether it be, you know, some of your higher limit break Kotori cards, your higher limit break Honoka cards. Honoka has some decent scores in her Fest card, Valentine's, and the Uma event keeps you on attribute. Kotori actually has a decent amount of cards that can score really, really well. Between her second Fest card, her party card, Welcome to the Party Kotori, and First Fest Kotori, even her filler, New World Kotori, she has 5 cards that you can use as, you know, as a backline and not worry too much about leaking a ton of voltage. For Aqua, Chica doesn't have that many great scores. Rico actually has a decent amount of scores, or not necessarily scores, but cards that can score well. For example, Prelude Rico, Noble Princess Rico, First Fest Rico, Moon Rabbit Rico, New Year's Rico, Second Fest Rico. All of Rico's cards, with the exception of her event card and her initial, can actually score pretty well per tap, so you don't lose out on a lot of voltage. Now when you get down to Niji, you know, another option you have to run is something like a Mystic Fairy Ayumu. If you don't have a ton of limit breaks on her, you could easily run her as part of like your backline cards. Basically every single one of, you know, the 5 Ayumu cards I have here, and even her Fest card, they're decent scores. They're not great, but they would score enough for you so that you don't have to worry about, oh my god, I'm using like a really, really weak card to score. Ice cards, only a couple of them will score decent. The recent free event card that we got from I, and her Fest card, and even her her Uma event card will score pretty decently. And then, you know, if you have to, you have Setsuna, but you know, you are going to be running off attributes, so there is that. Now, stylistically, for this particular song, it's weird, right? I don't know how I feel about it. Like, this feels like a song that Ayumu would be singing. Like, it either feels like I can't make up my mind whether this feels more like an Ayumu song or a Kasumi song. Because it doesn't really feel like a Setsuna song, right? Because a lot of us that have watched the anime and have been playing this game for a long time, like, right, we know the Setsuna songs, right? The Setsuna songs have a lot of stuff in common, right? Setsuna songs have that heavy rock feel. Also, we're gonna miss the first AC. Oh crap. Or Rina. Shredded says, or Rina. Yeah, I could see Rina singing this too. Now, like, so the issue with that first AC and not being able to pass it, a lot of times, you know, if you are having trouble getting to some of those early ACs, you know, there are a couple of cards that you could use to help you kind of get there earlier. It may take you a couple plays. But let's say if you don't have enough, if you've run out of Party Shioriko guests, you know, you could use a backline a card like a Bed Kanon and Initial Maru, right? Cards that have a live show active that will give you a gauge fill at the beginning of the song. Initial Pana is another one of those types of cards. So, you know, look through your options. If you are having trouble getting that first gauge off, and you know, because you don't have any good fillers. Your other secondary option is you could basically use your backline with a lot of off attribute fillers. Basically fill up your gauge enough to the point where you can get the gauge within the AC, switch back to your scoring, pop your gauge, and then kind of go on from there. So yeah, we would have scored better had we passed the first AC, but again, you know, this song, not terribly difficult. If we ever get it for a voltage ranking, however, I feel like this song has a very, very large chance of being troublesome, especially for the whales that are looking to cycle. And with that, we will go into the future and show how we tackle this song on the alt account. And here we are on the alt account, playing through Yada, Setsuna solo. Again, no gimmicks in the song, just the fact that non-second years lose 50% base crit chance, which, if you're running 3 high appeal cards that don't have a crit profile, meaning their highest stat is in technique, it shouldn't bother you that much, because your cards are naturally just gonna tap for more anyway. With a regular tap, you don't really worry about critting too much. Crit chance is a lot more prominent on cards that have gauge fill, especially. So like your first fest Kasumis, your second fest Arenas, and cards like that. That's where it tends to matter more. But yeah, we're gonna go with the regular frontline and regular high appeal first backline. But again, because this particular song has buffs towards second years, and we have AC2, which is a crit dependent AC, AC3, which is a tap skill dependent AC, AC6, which is another tap skill dependent AC. We needed to add in a whole bunch of second years to take advantage of the intra AC gimmicks, which is why we've done a backline strategy over here of Welcome to the Party Kotori, Second Fest Kotori, and First Fest Honoka. Now, this team build may be a little bit different for you. If you are having issues with stamina, because this song deals 925 damage per note, I would actually encourage you to, if you have cards like Initial Yo and even Uma Event I and a couple of the other second years, First Fest Rico is another card. If you're having issues with stamina, I would try to put those cards instead of these here in this back strategy, just so that you can basically increase your stamina pool to the point where the 925 damage per note isn't going to bother your frontline cards as much. Now, this is another song, Yada, that on the surface should be easier for a lot of players. You will run into problems, though, if you don't build your backlines particularly well, especially for the appeal chances. The 925 damage per note is big, but it's an 8.671 million voltage to S rank song, and you get 2.6 million voltage if you clear all the appeal chances, which is what makes the appeal chances so imperative. And We already started off by missing one. Not good. Whoops. As you can see, I'm in red stamina right now. And we still S-rank the song with like 1.4 million voltage over. So and I did mess up a little bit there, but this kind of goes to prove like I think if you happen to have issues with songs like Ketsui no Hikari, even songs like Koi ni Naritai Aquarium, that deal a lot of burst damage, for this particular song and getting through the crit ACs, the tap skill ACs, and stuff like that, making an entire separate strategy that is full of second gear either shielders or healers, preferably healers, will go a long way into helping maintain a very, very large stamina pool and keeping your stamina in the green, at the very worst scenario, yellow. But with that, we're now going to head over to the JP account to see how we built there. And here we are on JP. Once again, another song with second year gimmicks. So, we're going to go back to basically the type of song, type of layout we had for Diabolic Mulier. We're going to frontline Setsuna plus 2 Rikos. Especially with the second and third and sixth appeal chances needing crits, tap skills, and more tap skills, and giving all these buffs to second years. While yes, I can run Kanan, yes, I can run Ellie, this particular formation is just a little bit on the safer side. And if you don't have cards like, first Fest Setsuna, second Fest Rico, and stuff like that, there are plenty of other good second year options, even if they're not in the pure attribute, which basically boils down to First Fest Chica, First Fest Yo, Kids Land, no, not Kids Land, the other pure attribute Rico, and Mystic Fairy Ayumu. Even if you don't have a lot of those cards, to try and stay both on attribute and match the second year's gimmick, you don't have to worry about it too much. You could still run, like if I wanted to run Kanan Setsu Ellie, I still could. The only downside is, you would basically have to make, one of your side strategies over here, for me, either in the green or the blue, I would basically have to make that particular strategy full of second years. Because getting through appeal chances 2, 3, and 6 would be a little bit troublesome if I didn't load up a whole bunch of second years. But because I'm running a full second year frontline, it should be a lot easier. And again, the song itself doesn't have any appeal debuffs, right? The overall song gimmick is just a 50% decrease in base crit chance. um, which shouldn't be too terrible. You should be able to tap well. Um, and a type of song like this is really, really hard on your crit profile cards. And for those of you that don't know what crit profile cards any card whose highest base statistic is technique, it's that particular card gets a additional 15% increase to their crit rate. And any of those, crit type cards, a perfect example of this would be like First Fest Emma or First Fest Nozomi. Cards with extremely, extremely high technique values. These types of cards tend to do very, very poorly against this type of gimmick. And because that's how those particular cards score, right? They have a, decent-ish appeal value, but the way they score is through their insanely high, 60+% crit rate. And those particular cards would do terrible here. So you are better off using cards with just flat higher appeal, because a lot of those regular high appeal cards, whether it be a First Fest Setsuna, Second Fest Maru, Second Fest Rin, First Fest Kanan, cards like that, because they don't have a crit profile, they're just normally going to tap really, really hard. And while they do crit at like a 33 to 37% rate, that's not where all their scoring from. All their scoring is coming from their appeal. So you don't necessarily have to worry too much about that, losing that, 50% base crit rate. Now, luckily, we passed all the appeal chances, so we were able to gain the additional 2.6 million on our total voltage from the appeal chances. And this is kind of the luxury of being able to run a full team of second years, and the active attribute gets a lot of flack for having basically most of their cards, their best cards are, second year active attribute voltage types, with First Fest Setsuna, Toy Shop Panic Yo, Blue Omor Umi, Christmas Kotori, the list goes on and on and on. While those cards are very strong, right? Even though Yada is a pure attribute song, this song, again, it doesn't care about attribute as much. So if you happen to have really, really strong second years, even if they're off attribute, just run them. And if you can get away with it, try to run a full team of second years. It'll allow you to basically only focus on buffing your appeal in your backline, which should make the song a lot easier. Even if you happen, to need to tap in to some of your SRs, especially in the healing slot, feel free to do it. You should be able to get enough scoring from your UR scores to be able to compensate for the lack of voltage that you're getting from running like a second year SR appeal card like a Fruits Umi or something. But anyway, that's going to be it for the Yada playthroughs. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'm the Shaz. Take it easy, be nice to each other, and I will see you all next time.